Good morning, Nigeria. Welcome to today's newspaper review. Let's take a look at the stories dominating today's newspaper headlines. But first, we'll start from the Guardian newspaper. On the Guardian newspaper on page 4 and 5, with a big story written, "Posers over ex-governors, push for legislative seats." At the top of the newspaper, high petrol prices persist as Nigeria faces $11.5 billion crude oil loss. To get our full story, go to page 3 of the Guardian newspaper. Appeal court to hear ADC order suits against deregistration on July. This is coming from the appeal court to hear ADC and other suits against deregistration. That is on July. To get our full story, you go to page 7 of the Guardian newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, Ramaphosa denounces xenophobia as more Nigerians orders leave South Africa. This is coming from the South African president, Ramaphosa. He's saying he's going against xenophobia, and as more Nigerians and other African countries are leaving South Africa, he's still denouncing xenophobia. To get a full story, go to page 7 of the newspaper. Atiku, PRP, Falana raises concerns as Labour Party, Afenifere, Sanwo-Olu back move. This is coming from Atiku, PRP, Falana raised concerns as Labour Party, Afenifere, Sanwo-Olu back move. To get that full story, go to page 6 of the Guardian newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Vanguard. On the Vanguard, which is boldly written at page 5, our worries on state police by parties, other stakeholders. To get that full story, go to page 5 of the newspaper. Marketers retain high petrol prices as crude oil crashes to pre-war level. To get a full story, go to page 19 of the Vanguard newspaper. Federal government to review 70% minimum wage. This is coming from Bajabiamla. He's saying that federal government are to review 70% minimum wage. To get a full story, you go to page 13 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, on terror financing, federal government moves to charge US sanctioned BDC operator. To get a full story, go to page 9 of the newspaper. Still in the same newspaper on xenophobia, federal government repatriates 66 more Nigerians from South Africans. That is 66 more Nigerians to be leaving South Africans back to Nigeria. To get a full story, you go to page 9 of the newspaper. Lagos Mall collapse. Baby girl, 8 others feared dead, 26 rescued. To get a full story, where Lagos Mall collapsed, and yesterday there's another building that collapsed in Port Harcourt. To get those full story, you go to page 7 of the Vanguard newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Daily Trust. On the Daily Trust, which is boldly written, 7 residents, 2 cops killed in Katsina, Kaduna. At the top of the newspaper, 8 die, 26 rescued in Lagos building collapse. This is still on Lagos building collapse as 8 died, 26 are being rescued. To get that full story, you go to page 19 of the newspaper. Motorists demand cheaper petrol as crude price falls. Motorists are demanding cheaper petrol as crude price falls. To get that full story, go to page 5 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Daily Sun. On the Daily Sun, on page 7, 9, and 25, which is boldly written there, State Police Bill, pressure shifts to state legislators. State Police Bill as pressure shifts to state legislator. At the top of the newspaper on page 28, IPOB raises Kanu's conviction at US Civil Society Forum. To get a full story on IPOB raising Kanu's conviction at US Civil Society Forum, you go to page 26 of the newspaper. At the bottom of the newspaper, Oba of Benin constitutes traditional security network to tackle banditry in Edo. To get a full story, go to page 26, where Oba of Benin constitutes traditional security network in tackling banditry in Edo. NECO releases 2026 BECE results. To get a full story, go to page 25 of the newspaper. Still at the bottom of the newspaper, on Lagos building collapse, 8 died, 26 rescued in Lagos building collapse. To get that full story, go to page 6 of the Daily Sun newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the Punch, on the Punch in page 2, which is boldly written, 36 speakers back state police. Final test begins. To get that full story, go to page 2 of the Punch newspaper. At page 25 of the Punch newspaper, which is written, CBN orders banks to freeze 6 terror suspect accounts. CBN has ordered banks to freeze 6 terror suspect accounts. To get that full story, go to page 25 of the newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, Tinubu vows safe return of adopted Oyo teachers and pupils. To get that full story, go to page 9, where President Bola Ahmed Tinubu has vowed the safe return of adopted Oyo teachers and pupils. We hope he keeps to his words. Away from that newspaper to the Matrix newspaper. On the Matrix newspaper, which is written on page 2, on Lagos building collapse, death toll hits 2. At the top of the newspaper, Providus Unity Bank takes off, unveils bold vision to power Nigeria's economic future. To get that full story, go to page 3 of the Matrix newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, on national security, EFCC, CAC join forces against unregistered POS operators. This is coming from the national security, as EFCC, CAC are joining forces against POS operators that are not registered. At the bottom of the newspaper, on entertainment, this is coming from Spyro, a celebrity, talking about insecurity, says Nigerian clerics silent because crisis boasts their earnings. Nigerian clerics silent because crisis boasts their earnings. This is coming from Spyro. To get that full story, go to page 23 of the newspaper. On sports, Pep scores twice as Côte d'Ivoire qualifies for knockout stage. To get that full story, go to page 25 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to the New Telegraph. On the New Telegraph in page 3 and 28, which is boldly written, international insurgency fueling Nigerian security crisis. This is coming from NIIA research prof on international insurgency fueling Nigerian security crisis. At the top of the newspaper, on page 3 and 5, CBN orders assets of 6 individuals, 4 BDC's accounts frozen. At the bottom of the newspaper, still on Lagos building collapse, death toll hits 8 as 26 others rescued. To get that full story, you go to page 27 and 28 of the newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, presidential approval for ex-Nigerian airway workers, 36 billion naira payments missing. To get that full story, go to page 4 of the newspaper. Still in the same newspaper, at the bottom, on page 2, 5, and 7, Tinubu assures of improved salaries, allowances for workers soon. This is coming from President Tinubu. He assures of improving salaries, allowances for workers very soon. Just hope he keeps to it. To get that full story, go to page 2, 5, and 7 of the newspaper. Away from that newspaper to First Daily newspaper. On First Daily newspaper, which is boldly written, death trap. Many feared trapped as Lagos building collapses. At the top of the newspaper, federal government to review 70% minimum wage. This is coming from Gbajabiamila. He's saying that federal government are to review 70% minimum wage. Still in the same newspaper, CBN orders banks to freeze accounts of 6 terror financing suspects. On xenophobia, 66 more Nigerians return from South Africa. 66 more Nigerians will be returning from South Africa back to Nigeria. At the bottom of the newspaper, Appeal Court fixes July 7 for ADC deregistration showdown. Appeal Court fixes July 7 for ADC deregistration showdown. Lastly, at the bottom of the newspaper, Ekiti woman receives 1 million reward after rejecting vote buying offer. This is very impressive, as Ekiti woman receives 1 million reward after rejecting vote buying. She's really a good citizen of Nigeria. That's all for today's newspaper review. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more updates. I'm Chidera Eso. Do have a beautiful day.